My son looked me in the eyes and said, "Apologize to him. Get on your knees and apologize, or get out of my house." There were 11 people in that room. His wife, her parents, her 2 sisters, 3 of their friends, a neighbor I had never met before that evening, and me, standing in my son's living room, holding a casserole dish I had driven 40 minutes to bring him, wearing the same coat I wore to his college graduation 14 years ago. He said it again, quieter that time. Which was worse? Mom, kneel, or leave. I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. I did not raise a cruel child. I raised a boy who cried when his goldfish died. A boy who used to save his Halloween candy to share with kids at school who didn't get much. A boy I worked double shifts for, skipped vacations for, wore the same boots for 3 winters for, so he could have everything I didn't. That was the boy I raised. The man standing in front of me that night was someone else entirely. And I'm going to tell you exactly how we got there, and exactly what happened 4 months later, when he was sitting in a car in a driveway with no keys, no access, and 17 missed calls on his phone that I never picked up. But first, let me tell you about Raymond. Raymond is my son's father-in-law. He is the kind of man who enters a room and immediately starts calculating who owes him something. He runs a mid-sized construction supply company in the eastern part of our state, not enormous, but profitable enough that he's never let anyone forget it. He has a handshake that lasts 3 seconds too long. He talks over women without noticing. He once told me at a Christmas dinner, 2 years into my son Marcus's marriage to his daughter Diane, that I had done a decent job, all things considered. All things considered. I let it go. That was my first mistake. Over the following year, Raymond made it his quiet mission to establish a hierarchy in Marcus and Diane's home, one where his opinion was law, his preferences shaped every major decision, and my presence was tolerated the way you tolerate a creak in the floorboards. Annoying. Not worth fixing. Just background noise. Marcus didn't push back. Not once. I noticed. I said nothing. What I didn't say anything about was the house. The house Marcus and Diane lived in, the house where my son just told me to get on my knees, was partially funded by a $47,000 private loan I gave them when they were $31,000 short for the down payment, and Raymond had offered to help, then quietly changed his mind 2 days before closing. I had the paperwork. I had the wire transfer. I had the signed agreement Marcus himself drew up, though in all honesty I never intended to collect it. Raymond didn't know about the loan. Marcus had asked me not to tell him. He said Raymond would feel emasculated if he knew. So I stayed quiet. I signed the papers. I wired the money. And I watched Raymond walk around that house for 2 years like he'd built it with his own hands. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The night of the dinner, the night of the casserole and the coat and the 11 witnesses, started as a birthday celebration for Diane. I had been invited. I had confirmed. I had cooked for 2 days. And when I arrived 30 minutes before the stated time because Marcus had texted asking me to come early to help with setup, Raymond was already there. Already seated. Already holding court. I set the dish down in the kitchen, hugged Diane, and walked into the living room to say hello to everyone. Raymond was in the middle of a story. I waited. When he finished, I said, "Raymond, good to see you." He looked at me the way you look at a door that opened when you didn't knock. "Elaine," he said. "Just my name. Nothing else." Dinner happened. It was fine. Mostly fine. I sat at the far end of the table, away from Raymond's orbit, and I talked to Diane's younger sister, who I genuinely like, and I ate, and I smiled, and I did what I always do in that house. I made myself small enough not to create friction. Then the gifts. I had brought Diane something I knew she wanted. 3 months earlier, she had mentioned, once, casually, while we were in a shop together, that she had always loved vintage jewelry, specifically Art Deco pieces, and that there was a brooch she had seen online that she couldn't justify buying herself. I found it. I tracked down the seller. I paid $340 for it, and had it cleaned and boxed properly. It wasn't a loud gift. It was a thoughtful one. She opened it, and her face did something real. Something unscripted. "Oh my God!" she said. "How did you remember this?" And then Raymond leaned over from his chair, looked at the brooch, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's used, isn't it? Why would you give someone a used piece of jewelry?" The room went quiet. I said calmly, "It's vintage. There's a difference." "Used is used," he said, smiling like he was being charming. "My gift is in the car. Brand new. Just so everyone knows the difference." A few people laughed. Nervous laughs. The kind that fills silence when no one knows what else to do. Diane looked uncomfortable. Marcus looked at Raymond. And then Marcus looked at me. And I saw it on his face, the calculation. The weighing. The decision he was about to make. He stood up. "Mom," he said, "can I talk to you in the kitchen?" I followed him. He closed the door. And that's when he told me that Raymond was offended. That apparently earlier in the week I had said something, sent a text to be specific, that Raymond had found disrespectful. Marcus showed me the text. It was a message I had sent to Diane, not Raymond, about scheduling. It said something to the effect of, "I hope the timing works before your father locks down the whole calendar again." I had sent it as a light comment. Diane had shown it to Raymond. And Raymond had been sitting on it all week, waiting. "He wants an apology," Marcus said. "Marcus. That text was, Mom." He cut me off. "He's Diane's father. This is her birthday. You need to make this right. I'll speak to him privately." He doesn't want private. He wants it in front of everyone. He said if you're serious about being part of this family, you'll own it publicly. I stared at my son. He didn't look away. "And if I don't?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then I think it's best if you go home. And we take some time." We walked back into the living room. Everyone was still there. Still waiting. The way people wait when they know something is about to happen and they don't want to miss it. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom has something she'd like to say." And then he said it. The thing about kneeling. Right there, in front of all of them. His exact words were, "She'll apologize properly. On her knees. That's what he asked for, Mom. Just do it, and we can move on." I looked at Raymond. He was leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, watching me the way a man watches something he expects to perform. I looked at Diane. She was staring at the tablecloth. I looked at Marcus. My son. The boy who cried over a goldfish. Then I picked up my coat from the arm of the couch. I picked up my purse. And I walked to the kitchen, retrieved my casserole dish. I was not leaving that dish. And I walked out the front door without saying a single word to anyone. Marcus called before I reached my car. I didn't answer. He called twice more on the drive home. I turned my phone face down and drove in silence. Over the next week, I received 14 text messages. Some were from Marcus. A few were from Diane, which surprised me. One was from Diane's younger sister, who said only, "I thought what he said was disgusting. For what it's worth." I saved that one. The text from Marcus ranged from apologetic to defensive to, eventually, a tone I can only describe as entitled. There was one that said, "You embarrass yourself by leaving. Everyone thought it was dramatic." There was another that said, "Raymond is not the problem. You've never been able to accept that Diane's family matters too." And there was a final one, sent at 11:47 at night, that said, "If you're going to act like this, maybe the distance is good for both of us." I read that last one 3 times. Then I opened the drawer in my home office where I keep important documents. I pulled out the loan agreement. The one Marcus had signed. The one for $47,000, structured as a private loan with a 5-year repayment window, notarized and witnessed. The repayment window had 18 months left. I didn't do anything with it yet. I called my sister Carol, who is a retired paralegal and the sharpest person I know, and I had her look at the document. She confirmed it was valid and enforceable. She asked me what I was planning. I told her I wasn't sure yet. She said, "Whatever you decide, make sure you decide it cold, not hot." I waited 3 more weeks. During those 3 weeks, Marcus called twice. I answered once. The conversation lasted 6 minutes. He asked if I was ready to move forward. I asked if he had anything to say about what happened at the dinner. He said he thought we both could have handled it better. I told him I'd be in touch. I hung up. The second call I let go to voicemail. He said he was hoping I'd come to a small gathering they were having the following weekend. Raymond would be there. He thought it would be a good opportunity to reset. I deleted the voicemail after listening to it once. Then I did something that had nothing to do with the loan, something I had been putting off for almost a year for reasons that now seemed completely absurd. I called a woman named Patricia, who runs a boutique property management consulting firm. She and I had worked together briefly about 6 years earlier, when I spent time managing rental properties for a family friend. I had a skill set I had spent years quietly building: financial analysis, contract review, property assessment, and Patricia had been asking me for 18 months to come work with her formally. I had hesitated because Marcus had always made mild comments about me not needing to take on too much. I realized now, saying that out loud, how small I had let myself become. I took the meeting with Patricia. Within 2 weeks, I was consulting on 3 property portfolios. Within 6 weeks, I had a signed part-time contract that paid more per month than I had earned in any full calendar year during the decade I spent making myself convenient for everyone else. I don't tell you this to brag. I tell you this because it matters to what happened next. And because it was happening quietly, in the background, while Marcus and Raymond believed I was at home feeling ashamed of myself. I was not at home feeling ashamed of myself. 8 weeks after the dinner, I received a call from Diane. Not a text, a call. That was unusual enough that I picked up. She was crying before she finished saying my name. The story came out in pieces, and I'm not going to share all of it because some of it is hers and not mine to tell. But the broad shape of it was this: Raymond, flush with confidence after the dinner, had begun making decisions about Marcus and Diane's life with an authority that even Diane hadn't anticipated. There were conversations about where they would spend holidays. There were opinions about whether Diane should go back to work or stay home when they eventually had children, opinions Raymond had been sharing directly with Marcus rather than Diane herself. And there was a business idea Marcus had been quietly developing for 2 years, a side venture he had put real time and thought into, that Raymond had now decided to invest in, which in practice meant Raymond now had a financial stake and a corresponding opinion about every single aspect of it. Diane told me she had found the paperwork for Raymond's investment. And she had also found, I want you to feel the weight of this, she had found the original loan documents from me. The $47,000. She had not known. Marcus had not told her. She didn't know whether to be more upset that her husband had hidden the loan or that her father had spent 2 years performing financial generosity in a house he had never actually paid for. I listened. I didn't lecture. I said, "Diane, I'm sorry you're in the middle of this." She asked me why I never said anything about the loan, why I'd stayed quiet for 2 years. I told her the truth, because Marcus asked me to, and because I loved him, and because I thought love meant protecting people even when they didn't deserve it. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Raymond wants Marcus to sell the house. Move into something bigger. He's already been talking to a realtor. He didn't ask us, he just started the process." I said, "Diane, does Marcus know about the loan repayment schedule?" She said, "What repayment schedule?" I told her the loan had a documented repayment window. That by its own terms, if the property was sold before repayment was complete, the outstanding balance became due at closing. Another long silence. "How much is outstanding?" she asked. "Just under $44,000. I heard her exhale. "Now, I want to be very clear about something. My intention was never to ambush my son. My intention was never to use the loan as a weapon. What I wanted, what I had always wanted, was to be treated as a human being who had earned basic dignity. But I also understood that dignity sometimes has to be backed by something real in order to be respected by certain people. Raymond was one of those people. I called my sister Carol again. I called the attorney I had been referred to, a no-nonsense woman named Helen who specialized in private lending disputes. I told her the situation. She told me my position was airtight. She also told me something I hadn't fully considered, that because Raymond had been moving ahead with a realtor on the property without knowledge of the outstanding encumbrance, there could be additional complications for him professionally if a sale moved forward without proper disclosure. I asked Helen what my next step should be. She said, "Send a formal notice of outstanding balance. Certified mail. To the property address. Right now." She drafted the letter. I reviewed it. It was clean, professional, and completely accurate. It stated the original loan amount, the terms, the remaining balance, and the clause relating to property sale or transfer. It was not threatening. It was simply real. It arrived on a Thursday. Marcus called me 11 times that day. I let every single call go to voicemail. I listened to each voicemail in order, that evening, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of tea. The first 2 were confused. The third one started to get loud. The fourth one was quieter, which meant he had spoken to someone, probably Diane, who had helped him understand the actual situation. By the 5th voicemail, the tone had shifted entirely. He was asking me to call him back. He was saying we needed to talk. He was saying, "Mom, I need you to understand that Raymond has already put down a retainer with the realtor, and if the sale gets complicated, he's going to..." He stopped himself. He didn't finish that sentence. By voicemail 11, it was past 10 o'clock at night. His voice was tight in the way voices get when someone has been holding panic for hours. He said, "Mom, please, just call me." I finished my tea. I went to bed. I called him back the next morning at 9 a.m. He picked up on the first ring. I did not raise my voice. I did not lecture him. I did not bring up the dinner immediately. I simply said, "Marcus, I received your messages. I understand you have some questions about the loan agreement." He tried to redirect. He said, "Mom, can we first just talk about, the dinner? I think I handled the loan, Marcus. Let's start there." We talked for 40 minutes. By the end of it, I understood several things. 1. Raymond had been pushing for the sale for months and Marcus had not felt able to push back. 2. Raymond did not know about the loan, still did not know, and Marcus was terrified of what would happen when he found out. 3. Marcus, despite everything, was a man who had let himself be slowly managed by a domineering father-in-law and had chosen the path of least resistance at every turn, including the path that led to asking his mother to kneel on a living room floor. I told Marcus I wasn't going to forgive what happened at the dinner in a phone call. I told him we would address it face to face, properly, when he was ready to do that. I told him that in the meantime, I was not going to complicate his life unnecessarily, but that the loan was real, the terms were real, and any realtor Raymond brought in would need to be informed of the outstanding encumbrance before any listing went live. That was not a choice. That was the law. Marcus went quiet. Then he said, "Raymond is going to lose it." I said, "That's not really something I can help with." Another silence. "He was already angry that you left that night," Marcus said. "He told me you were unstable. That women like you always cause problems." "Women like me," I repeated. His words, Mom. "Not mine." "And what did you say when he said that?" Marcus didn't answer right away. That told me everything. "Call me when you're ready to have the other conversation," I said. "I love you. Goodbye." I hung up. What happened in the following 2 weeks happened fast. Raymond found out about the loan. I don't know exactly how, whether Marcus told him, or whether Diane did, or whether the attorney's letter got passed around. But he found out. And when he did, he apparently spent the better part of an afternoon on the phone with his own attorney, who told him the same thing Helen had told me: the encumbrance was valid. The sale could not proceed cleanly without resolution. And if Raymond had already committed to a realtor or made any representations to a buyer without disclosing the lien, which apparently had moved further along than Marcus even knew, there were potential liability issues. Raymond then called Marcus and, from what I understand, said things that no man should say to his son-in-law. Diane was present for part of it. Diane's younger sister, who was visiting that weekend, heard all of it. I know this because the younger sister texted me. She said, "You should know Raymond is unraveling, and it has nothing to do with you doing anything wrong. I just want you to have the full picture." I thanked her. I did not respond beyond that. On a Tuesday afternoon, about 4 months to the week after the dinner, 4 months after I walked out of that house with my casserole dish and my coat, Marcus drove to the house. Not his house. The house. Specifically, he drove to the house because he and Diane had had a significant argument, and he had, in a moment of poor judgment, said something that led Diane to ask him to leave for the evening so they could both cool down. He drove to the house, and then realized, because they had recently changed the garage code as part of a security update Raymond had insisted on, a code Marcus had not yet received, that he could not get in. He did not have the new code. He did not have his spare key, which was inside. He called Diane. She did not pick up. He called her sister. He called 2 friends. Then he called me. 17 times across 93 minutes. I know the number because I looked at my phone log later. I was in a meeting with Patricia and a property investor when the calls came in. I saw the phone buzzing on the table and turned it face down. When my meeting finished, I saw the missed calls. I sat in my car in the parking lot, and I thought about calling him back. Then I thought about 11 people in a living room. I thought about a casserole dish. I thought about a man in an armchair waiting for me to perform. I thought about 17 voicemails and the one that said the distance was probably good for both of us. I texted Marcus one line. "Are you somewhere safe?" He texted back immediately. "Yes, I'm in the car. Mom, please call me." I texted, "Okay. I'm glad you're safe." Then I drove home. He called 3 more times. I let them go. He showed up at my front door the next morning at 8:30. I opened it. He looked like he had slept in the car, which I think he had. He had not shaved. He was wearing the same jacket as the day before. I stepped aside to let him in. I made coffee. We sat down. He talked for a long time. About Raymond. About how it had started slowly, small preferences, small deferences, small choices, and how at some point he had looked up and realized he had handed over a significant amount of control over his own life, and didn't know exactly when or how. He talked about the dinner. He cried. Actual tears. He said he did not recognize himself in what he had said to me that night. He said it was the worst thing he had ever done. He said he had known it was wrong while it was happening and had done it anyway because Raymond had spent the previous 3 days making it clear, in that way Raymond had, that Marcus's standing in the family depended on whether he could manage his own mother. Manage his own mother. I listened to all of it. I did not rush him. I did not fill the silences. When he finished, I said, "I know who you are. I also know that knowing who you are is not enough. You have to choose him." He looked up at me. "Every day," I said. "You have to choose the man I know you are. And that means not letting anyone, not Raymond, not anyone, use you against the people who actually love you." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm genuinely sorry. I know that doesn't fix it." "No," I said. "It doesn't. But it's where we start. I want to tell you how the rest of it resolved, because some of it is worth knowing and some of it is still unfolding. The house sale didn't happen. Raymond eventually backed down from the push to sell, partly because his attorney advised him that proceeding without resolving the encumbrance was a liability risk, and partly, I think, because Diane had a conversation with him that I was not present for, and that she has only described to me in broad terms. What I know is that after that conversation, Raymond's presence in Marcus and Diane's home became notably less constant. He still calls. He still has opinions. But there is something that has changed in the dynamic, a recalibration that happened without any single dramatic confrontation. Sometimes things shift not because of an explosion, but because of a door that quietly, permanently closes. I never had the apology dinner. I didn't need one. What I got instead was a Sunday morning 3 weeks after Marcus appeared at my door, when Diane called and asked if she and Marcus could come over for lunch. They brought wine. We sat in my backyard. Nobody mentioned the dinner directly. Marcus helped me fix a cabinet hinge that had been loose for months. Diane and I talked about the vintage brooch, which she wore that day, and she said it was her favorite thing in her jewelry collection. That was enough. Raymond never called me. I did not expect him to. I did not need him to. The loan is being repaid, not because I demanded it, but because Marcus offered, and because Diane, knowing the full history now, insisted. The first payment came in last month. Quiet, direct deposit, no note attached. I don't need the note. I sat with Patricia yesterday over coffee, and she asked me about my plans for the next quarter. I have 3 new client meetings scheduled. I have a project I've been building quietly for almost 2 years that is closer than it has ever been to becoming something real and public. I am not the woman who stood in that living room holding a casserole dish, being asked to perform humiliation for a man who had never earned a single thing he pretended to own. I walked out of that room and I never stopped walking. Some people see a woman leave a room and think she has lost something. They're almost never right.